The Premier League and the NFL are two of the biggest sports leagues in the world, and they're competed within two sports-crazy nations. However, historically, they haven't translated too well into each other. The Americans will always stand by their big four sports: basketball, ice hockey, American football and baseball, whereas the Brits take more of a traditional approach and stay with sports like football, boxing and rugby. Until recently, that is. Both sports have seen huge growth in the opposite country over the last 10 years. So if you're a Brit wondering who you should support in the NFL, or an American wondering which Premier League shirt you should buy for the first time, well, you're in the right place, because this is all 20 Premier League teams and their NFL counterparts. Kicking us off, we have Arsenal and the Green Bay Packers. Now, when your American sports-loving, NFL-loving girlfriend who's from the Midwest suggests that this is wrong, you should probably sit there and listen. So instead, I carried on and went for it anyway. I think Green Bay and Arsenal are linked in so many ways, mainly historically, but also recently. I mean, both have massive franchises, huge fan bases, big stadiums, big global reach. And recently, you could argue that they play a bit bridesmaid to the bride. I mean, Arsenal can't stop finishing runner-up in the Premier League, and Green Bay can't put together a good playoff performance to save their lives. However, recently, Arsenal have had Bukayo Saka come through, and Green Bay have had Jordan Love, who I can see both leading their teams to glory. And in the past, Aaron Rodgers and Henry are very comparable. I mean, both won multiple individual awards like MVP and Premier League Player of the Year, but they also won team accolades like the Super Bowl and the Premier League, so I love this link. Aston Villa and the Minnesota Vikings. If you're sat there and you're a Villa fan like myself, thinking, okay, the Vikings, they sound cool, this must be a promising link. Well, not really. It's more because of how bad both teams were in the early 2010s. Both clubs ran more of a circus act than they did a professional sports team in this time. I'm talking relegation battles, I'm talking lack of playoffs, I'm talking superstars that never turned out to work. You name something bad that can happen to a sports team, the Vikings and Villa probably did that between 2010 and 2015. However, what links these two even closer is the fact they are bouncing back. Both have elite head coaches in place right now in Unai Emery and Kevin O'Connell, and they've both just achieved their best seasons in NFL and Premier League history. So it's not all bad. There's definitely an upside to this. And they both play in a shade of purple, so that's something else. Bournemouth and the Jacksonville Jaguars. When talking about two franchises like these, you're meant to use the politically correct term, small market team. But if we're being completely honest, they're just two tiny franchises compared to their peers. And that's what links them so well. It's not a bad thing. Bournemouth is a small town in the south of England, and Jacksonville have only been a franchise for the last 20 years, so their rise has been impressive. They both have limited resources, and arguably shouldn't be in the position they're in now. Without their communities, they wouldn't be where they are either. I mean, Bournemouth were on the brink of extinction if their fans hadn't have rallied, and Jacksonville wouldn't have an NFL team if it wasn't for their community. Both did have a rough 2020 though. I mean, Jacksonville went 1-15, which is woeful, and Bournemouth got relegated. So they have both bounced back since then. I mean, Bournemouth sit 4th right now in the Premier League, and Jacksonville have had a great start going 4-2 for their standards. So yeah, I think these two go hand in hand, and they definitely have a big future ahead of them as well. Brentford and the New York Jets. I should probably establish straight away that this is an off-the-pitch comparison, more so than on the pitch. Because if you're a Brentford fan who's about to go rush off and check the Jets' results, please don't. They've been absolutely horrendous. However, off the pitch, yeah, loads of comparisons. I mean, both have hired new head coaches this season, Aaron Glenn for the Jets and Keith Andrews for Brentford, both of which had zero head coach experience going into their roles. Geographically speaking, both are from major cities. I mean, Brentford are from London and the Jets are from New York. And both arguably aren't even the biggest top 3 sporting franchises in their city. I mean, Brentford are the 7th biggest team from London in the Premier League alone. And the Jets are compared to the likes of the Knicks, the Mets, the Yankees and the Giants. So they're both in big cities but aren't really big players. Brighton and Hove Albion and the Washington Commanders. Whilst I've been making this video, I've kind of realised that some teams just have a connection that you can't really understand why. And I think it's something to do about the fact that both franchises feel extremely good right now. Since the new ownership of Tony Bloom in 2009 and Josh Harris in 2023 for the Commanders, both have been on a purely upward trajectory. The Washington Commanders, who have had 25 years of chaos, have finally started drafting wisely again. And Brighton, they buy young, they mature the player and they sell him for a massive profit. Recent achievement is also kind of similar. I mean, Washington made it to an NFC Championship final, which nobody would have had them doing in the last 10 years. And Brighton secured Europa League football 2 years ago. Again, if you'd have said that to Brighton and Commanders fans 10 years ago, they'd have called you crazy. So whilst there's not too many direct links, I think the feeling around the two clubs is extremely similar. Burnley and the Carolina Panthers. This one's quite similar to Bournemouth and the Jags because it's another two small market teams that I've put with each other, but it goes deeper than that with these two. The fan bases of the Panthers and Burnley kind of deserve medals. They have had to deal with some proper toss in the last 10 years. Panthers got to a Super Bowl in Super Bowl 50, and it's been a downhill slope ever since then. And Burnley peaked by getting to the Europa League in 2018, and again, have never hit the heights. Their fan bases have had to watch some terrible football in both cases on the field. I mean, Burnley's style of play, even in the Premier League, has been awful, and the Panthers have done nothing since that Super Bowl appearance. So, two of the most hard-hit fan bases in both sports, and they just go perfectly with each other. Crystal Palace and the Cincinnati Bengals. This was just all about vibes. I think these two match up so well. And I think it's mainly because of the attacking flair and the players that both have had over the last 5 years. Because Crystal Palace have had that trio of Ebery Eze, Michael Elise and Wilfred Zaha, where the Cincinnati Bengals had Jamar Chase, T. Higgins and Joe Burrow. I just think the vibes are immaculate. Lots of attacking football, all about the offense. But both do also have a superstar defender in Mark Gahey and Trey Hendrickson. They match up so well. And then, of course, they do both have achievement as well. I mean, the Bengals won the AFC Championship in 2022 and Palace won the FA Cup last season. So, out of every team in this list, these two might be the most hand-in-hand. Vibes, just absolute vibes between the two of them. Everton and the Chicago Bears. Now, having lived at university with an Everton fan for the best part of 2 years, and now spending time with my girlfriend and her family who are Bears fans, I can tell you for a fact, these are the two most similar fan bases in this entire list. Forget on the pitch, forget off the pitch. The fan bases are very similar. Both of them don't feel like they're owed something. It's more that they see the potential that their club/franchise has got. I mean, both are in great areas of the country. They attract big names. Something just hasn't clicked for either franchise yet, but they're on an upward trajectory. I mean, Ben Johnson has taken over at the Bears and David Moyes has taken over again at Everton. And albeit at different stages of their coaching career, both have instilled this hope and belief that they can push on to get accolades. And off the pitch, both are in the process of getting into a new stadium. I mean, Everton already have. They've moved into the Hill Dickinson Stadium this season. The Bears are in the final stages of kind of working out where they're going to relocate in the Chicagoland area. Fulham and the Atlanta Falcons. Now, being a Falcons fan myself, I was really intrigued to kind of get cracking with this and work out who the biggest bottlers were in the Premier League. And of course, Newcastle won a trophy this season, so did Palace, and I already put Villa with the Minnesota Vikings, so there was nowhere to really turn. Until I realised that Fulham and Falcons have the most unique link in this whole list. And that's the fact that their biggest enemy is their own doorstep. I mean, Georgia, the state which Atlanta is located, they like college football arguably more than the NFL. The Falcons are competing with the Georgia Bulldogs and Georgia Tech every single week. As for Fulham, they've got Chelsea on their doorstep, as well as the whole of London. And when there's 7 Premier League teams already in London, and you're arguably the second smallest, you're already struggling. Also, they've both had their biggest moment in their history in the last 15 years. Fulham lost the Europa League to Atletico Madrid, and Falcons lost the Super Bowl in devastating fashion to New England. So, it's a negative link, but it's still a link. Leeds United and the Las Vegas Raiders. When I was researching this, I figured that these two actually had a lot more in common than I first thought. I mean, I've never really looked too closely into the Raiders or Leeds, but when I realised that they both have massive stadiums and the loyalty of each fan base, it kind of showed to me that there are a lot of similarities. Now, both have had their problems with financial mismanagement in the past, and they've bounced back. And loyalty is the main word with this one. I mean, the Raiders have followed their team around the country. They used to be the Oakland Raiders as well. And Leeds were following and going to Elland Road in League One and packing out away ends in League One. So the passion is what links these two more than anything. And I mean, off the pitch, they're both in highly, highly untapped markets, with Las Vegas and Yorkshire both being massive touristy spots. And there's definitely potential for these two to really blow up and be massive. Liverpool and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I could sit here and spend 10-15 minutes talking about how similar these two franchises and clubs are, but I'll try and keep it short and sweet. Everything that you think of to do with Liverpool, it resembles in San Francisco. The fans travel well, the accolades that they've won. If you know someone who supported either of these teams in the 80s, the chances are you hate them because of how much they won back then, and they probably rub it in your face. Iconic players, Joe Montana, Kenny Dalglish, household names. I could really go on and on. I mean, even more recently, both have been on a drought of success and were picked up by coaches who have built them from the ground up again. I mean, Jurgen Klopp took over and rebuilt Liverpool, won Champions League titles. Kyle Shanahan has made the 49ers compete again. You know, he took them to a Super Bowl. They're just so similar in every aspect, and it's really a perfect fit. I'd love to do another video talking about how similar these are, because I could go on for ages. Manchester City and the Kansas City Chiefs. Modern day success. That's the answer to why these two are similar. When the history books are written and you look back in 30 years' time about the era of maybe the 2010s or the 2015 to 2025 of who dominated and who won those eras in the NFL and Premier League, it's going to be Manchester City and the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, both have Hall of Fame head coaches in Pep Guardiola and Andy Reid that are going to be remembered forever. You know, City have won 22 major trophies in the time that Pep's been here. The Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowls. You know, it's crazy how much they've won. I mean, Patrick Mahomes and Kevin De Bruyne could be compared in terms of being the best player in the league for multiple seasons. And the bottom line is, when you get to February, or you get to May, or should I say the end of January for the NFL, these two aren't going to be far away. That's the bottom line. They're not going to be far away, because they're always thereabouts. And just winners. Serial winners. Manchester United and the Dallas Cowboys. This one was pretty obvious, and I think most people who have any idea about either sport would know this was coming. The thing that links these two is they're bigger than just being a football club or just being an NFL franchise. They're brands. Everybody knows about them. Everybody knows about Manchester United. Everybody knows about the Dallas Cowboys. You know, they have the most social media followers. They have the highest attendances. Their stadiums are never empty. You best believe their mega stores are never empty either, because their owners like their money. And funnily enough, they love an owner protest as well, because they blame the Glazers and Jerry Jones for, you know, holding their franchises and clubs back for years upon years. But it isn't all negative. Both have also been massively successful, especially United in the Alex Ferguson era, becoming the biggest club in England. Are they the biggest club in the world? I still think Real Madrid and Barcelona edged them slightly. But yeah, every season begins the same. They think they're going to win it all. They think they're going to win the Super Bowl. And it usually ends in tears. Newcastle United and the Baltimore Ravens. I was struggling for Newcastle, I'll be honest. I was struggling. I think they're such a unique football team and football club that it was hard to pinpoint exactly one NFL team that matched everything they stand for, but I think the Ravens came close. I know the Ravens had success in the early 2010s, but if you look at the last 5 years, they've both risen from relative obscurity. I mean, Newcastle came from the Championship and now have qualified for the Champions League 2 in the last 3 years, and the Ravens are playoff regulars. I know they're not great this season, but I do blame that mainly on injuries. One thing I did link with these two is they treat their club icons like absolute gods. I mean, you're not going to go to a Ravens game and not see a Ray Lewis jersey or walk past a statue. And if you go to Newcastle, Alan Shearer is held in the same regard as the Pope and the Queen and God, you know? So they do have a lot of similarities, I guess. And they're both from small markets as well. And they both represent a bird. Nottingham Forest and the Denver Broncos. This one is extremely basic and simple. Nottingham Forest won the Champions League in 1979 and 1980 back-to-back. And the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 1997 and 98. That links these two in more ways than you think. I mean, not many clubs around the world have done back-to-back titles of anything, let alone the two biggest in each sport. Meanwhile, in the present day, there is a few similarities. I mean, both are on an upwards trajectory. Forest have got Europa League this season, albeit controversially, and Denver did sneak a playoff spot last season, and I do think that both have high aspirations. I know Forest are struggling a little bit at the moment, and they do have a lot of young talent leading them. More than Gibbs White He's kind of Forest's main man right now. And Bo Nix, again, one of the main men for the Broncos. I do like Patrick Surtain as well. But yeah, there's a lot to be excited about for both teams, I think. Sunderland and the Cleveland Browns. Now, like I said with the Brentford and the Jets link, Sunderland fans, if you know anything about the NFL, please do not be frightened by this and do not click off this video. I promise you it's a historical link and not a present day, because I do like what Sunderland are doing in the Premier League and don't really like what the Browns are doing in the NFL, but I digress. Both teams have been to sporting hell and back in the last kind of 10 to 15 years. While Sunderland were constantly fighting relegation in the early 2010s, they did face back-to-back relegations from the Premier League down to League One, and they got stuck in League One for a bit, which any Premier League fans will know is the idea of hell. Whilst the Browns recorded an NFL worst 0-16 in 2017. So, as you can imagine, both clubs and both fan bases have kind of hit rock bottom, and that's what ties you guys so well. Tottenham Hotspur and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll be real with you Tottenham fans, I struggled. I did struggle. I think you're a unique club in a lot of ways. You're a massive club, but you haven't got that much to show for it other than your stadium. And now, I know you're going to think, well, we won the Europa League last year. Yes, and that is really the reason why I've linked you to the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers also broke their trophy drought in 2021, where Tom Brady led them to the Super Bowl. Other links are a bit more of a reach. Obviously, you've both had a legendary player who's been playing for over 10 years. I mean, Son has just left to go to LA, and Mike Evans is entering his 11th season, so they've been there for a similar amount of time, which I thought was a cool little link. Off the pitch, from a business point of view, I mean, you're both from massive markets. Tottenham being in London, also having a massive Jewish following as well, and Tampa Bay being in Florida, again, another massive market. So, that, there's more similarities than I credit myself for, but yeah, Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Spurs. West Ham United and the Seattle Seahawks. Prior to this video, I didn't know too much about the Seattle Seahawks, so when I was researching them and I found out that they had such like a core blue-collar working class base within their fan base, it instantly set alarms off about their link to West Ham. I mean, anyone who's met a West Ham fan knows that they're working class through and through. I mean, the club was born and raised in East London, and that goes hand in hand with the Seattle Seahawks. On the pitch, they've both had successes within the last 10 years. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks won the Super Bowl in the early 2010s, and West Ham won the Conference League a couple of years ago. So, both have silverware to show for the last 10 years. Off the pitch, like I've said with many of the London clubs, you're fighting each other. You're fighting each other for fans, for money, for sponsorships. And the Seattle Seahawks kind of have that problem with California being just a state away below Oregon. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of similarities with these two. A lot of them are a bit of a stretch, but yeah. Wolverhampton Wanderers and the Arizona Cardinals. The thing that links these two teams is actually quite sad, and it's the fact that their potential is sat there ready to be exploited, but they're both ran by well below par front offices. Any Wolverhampton fan would tell you right now that the players they've had over the last 10 years, if they were to have kept them all together, they would have gone on to achieve something, at least some silverware. And I'm sure Cardinal fans would, echo the same response. They've had great players. They've just not used them correctly. And both teams are sat here ready to explode. I mean, Wolves were in the top half of the Prem, and the only other team in their area of the country was Villa, who was struggling in relegation battles. And Arizona have nothing in their own state. They are the state. So they're both sat there ready to explode. I know it's a rash link and it's quite far-fetched, but it just feels like a waste of potential. Potential is the word that hangs over these two. Chelsea and the LA Rams. Now, I got to the end of the video, editing the video, and I realised I'd forgot this one. So I don't know how it slipped under the radar, but here we are. And it's a good job I did notice, because I think it's one of the better links out of all the 20 Premier League clubs. I mean, I'm looking more so at Chelsea's reign under Abramovich here. They were very money-focused. They wanted success right here, right now. Some coaches wouldn't even see out a season if they weren't going to bring back a trophy at the end of the season. And I think you can compare that to the Rams somewhat. I mean, the Rams traded away some picks for like Matthew Stafford and Ramsey, which won them the Super Bowl about 3 years ago. So I guess they kind of have a similar style. Again, like I've mentioned, for like West Ham and Tottenham and Fulham, the City situation. I think Brentford and New York Jets was the one that I compared this to, but they're both from massive cities, New York, London. And again, they've both had recent success. Chelsea winning the Champions League in 2021 and the Rams winning the Super Bowl in 2022. So, yeah, a lot of similarities with these two.